You can walk by the warm light in the window and feel nothing. Or you can at that moment realize that joy is not hidden somewhere far away. It is already nearby, but you have stopped noticing it. It is precisely this that breaks life from the inside. And it is exactly what we will analyze now, to return to you the feeling of a living day. The problem is almost never that there is no good in life at all. The problem is that the mind constantly waits for something large, noticeable, approved by others. And because of this, it undervalues what makes the day real. A successful presentation, someone else's praise, recognition, beautiful plans for the future. All of this quickly captures attention, but just as quickly takes it away. And then there remains a strange emptiness, as if life is passing somewhere nearby, and you are just watching it from the side. That is why so many people get tired not of life itself, but of the constant chase for what should confirm their worth. They live in anticipation of the moment when they can finally exhale and tell themselves that everything has worked out. But by that time, you have already gotten used to not living, but comparing, not feeling, but evaluating, not being inside the day, but checking it against someone else's picture. In these moments, you will see why joy disappears, even for those who seem to have everything fine externally, and what truly prevents them from noticing simple things. It will become clear how to redirect attention to what is already in your life, and why this changes not just your mood for an hour, but the very sense of life. It is especially easy to live days on autopilot right now. The screen grabs attention from morning to night. News throws out anxiety, and the mind is always occupied with what has not yet been done, achieved, and proven. In such a race, a person almost imperceptibly loses touch with the simple things that once kept him afloat, and then wonders why there is so little warmth inside, even if life is going well on the outside. This topic is important right now because modern fatigue often does not look like a complete collapse, but like a quiet burnout of feelings. You seem to be functioning, responding, planning, coping, but you stop truly noticing the day. And the more noise around you, the more your ability to rejoice in not the event itself, but in the very fact that you are living, walking, seeing, breathing, talking, making mistakes, and continuing to move, diminishes. In these minutes, it will not only become clear why joy slips away, but also where exactly it is lost in everyday bustle. First, we will analyze this scenario itself, how attention goes into expectations, comparisons, and constant self-evaluation. Then there will be a practical part, where you will be able to regain contact with small things, without tension, and beautiful promises. And in the end, everything will come together in a simple conclusion that joy does not come after the perfect life. It returns life itself to your hands. There is one more important point that is rarely discussed. When a person stops noticing small joys, they do not just become gloomier. They start to understand worse what this day is actually lived for. Then any effort seems heavy, any achievement feels inadequate, and any calm feels suspicious. Therefore, the conversation here is not about naive optimism, but about returning to a lively perception, without which even good events pass by and leave no trace. More often than not, joy does not disappear suddenly. It is displaced by constant internal comparison. The brain gets used to looking for not what is really happening, but what this event means in the eyes of others. And at this moment, a simple day becomes too quiet, too ordinary, almost imperceptible. A person can sit in a warm room, feel heaviness in their shoulders, dryness in their mouth, stare at a single point, and still think that life will only begin later when something significant appears that deserves attention. It is here that the trap arises, because waiting for the big does not allow one to see the small, and without the small, the big also ceases to feel real. There is a common mistake that joy must be earned. It seems that first you must achieve, appear stronger, become more noticeable, complete yet another task, and only then will you have the right to calmly feel the warmth of an ordinary day. But that is not how it works. While you postpone life for later, the body constantly lives in a state of tension. The jaw is clenched, breathing is short, palms are cold, and even a good moment passes by without leaving a trace. The false belief here is simple and very stubborn. If the day is not impressive, it means it is worth almost nothing. In reality, it is precisely these days that shape the feeling of grounding, because they teach you to be within your own life, not in its advertising version. This is especially noticeable in a person who has been waiting for recognition at work for a long time. They are told that everything is going pretty well, but it doesn't get any easier inside because they are not looking at the process itself, but at the final sign of approval. They no longer see how the room smells of coffee, how, after a difficult conversation, there is a tired but alive relaxation in the body, how the evening noise outside suddenly coincides with a rare feeling of silence. And thus the day seems to pass in vain, even though there was enough reality in it. It works exactly the same for someone who is chasing the future version of themselves. They mentally live in a moment where everything has finally come together, perceiving tonight as a draft. Hence the emptiness, irritation, and the feeling that you are always next to life, but not in it. The turnaround here is very important. The joy of simple things is not weakness or naivety, but a skill to redirect attention to where life is already happening. It does not make you less ambitious. It simply stops allowing others' expectations to take away your connection to what is happening right now. There is another context where this is seen particularly clearly. When a person has been ill for a long time, recovering after a difficult period, or just living for months in overload mode, they often notice that their ability to rejoice has not broken, but seems to have become rough. Not because they have become worse, but because the nervous system has gotten used to living cautiously. And then, small things cease to resonate inside. A cup of warm tea does not bring joy. A clean sheet does not engage. A short, calm conversation does not touch. But it is at this moment that it becomes clear that the problem is not in the absence of beauty around, but in the fact that attention has been held too long on what was supposed to prove your worth. If this belief is not noticed, a person will continue to seek salvation in big events and will repeatedly miss what could already fill them. Do one simple exercise right now for 60 seconds. Look around and honestly find 3 things that already make this moment alive. Don't evaluate them. Don't search for meaning in them. Just note with your eyes and body what exactly is in front of you. When you do this, your brain temporarily stops chasing after big confirmations and returns to reality, where life is already happening. At first, it may seem like too little, but this is how the return of attention works, because joy always starts not with excitement, but with recognition. Try to ask yourself one question at the moment when the day seems gray or empty. What in this day can already be simply noticed rather than corrected? This question works because it doesn't force you to urgently become better and doesn't require you to come up with a beautiful answer. It shifts your attention from deficit to presence, and that's usually where the tension begins to fade. When a person answers honestly, They suddenly notice the light on the table, the steady sound of the street outside the window, the movement of their shoulder after sitting for a long time, and the day stops being a monolithic fatigue. It is again made up of specific things that can be felt. How to integrate this into chaos. At work, in an elevator, on the road, or between two calls, do it unnoticed by others in 60 seconds. Shift your gaze from the screen to the nearest surface. Relax your jaw. Feel how your feet are on the floor, or how your back leans against the chair, and mentally name what already exists right now. At that moment, a brief sensation of support often appears in the body. Breathing becomes deeper, and shoulders stop. Holding unnecessary tension. It may not look like a big practice from the outside, but inside it brings you back from automation to the real day. If you do this at least in those moments when your attention is drawn away into comparison and expectations, you start to change not just your mood for a minute, but the way you live your day. You stop waiting for a special occasion to notice the good, and gradually learn not to overlook what is already nearby. The biggest change here is not that life becomes cloudless, but that you stop demanding constant proof of its value. When attention is constantly focused on evaluation, the day breaks down into tasks, comparisons, and expectations. When attention returns to what already exists, that same day again becomes a place to live, rather than just checking yourself against someone else's picture. That is why the joy of simple things does not seem loud. It does not promise an ideal mood and does not cancel out fatigue, but it brings you back into contact with the reality where your life resides. Not in the future, not in approval, not in a successful version of yourself, but in today, which is already happening and still remains yours. If tomorrow you catch yourself feeling that everything important is somewhere ahead, that is not a reason to start over from scratch. Just return your gaze to where there is already light, movement, sound, temperature, presence. Often, this is exactly what is lacking to stop living as an observer and find yourself within your own day again. And the most accurate sign of change is that you no longer need to wait for a special moment to feel that you are alive. If this video was helpful to you, subscribe so you don't miss the next day.